Welcome back, everybody. Following episode deuce last week is episode trois. So obviously I say trois because it's Valentine's Day and French is a language of love, right? Love this guy, you know. So in the spirit of Valentine's Day, we're going to talk about a really kind of intimidating dish in theory, because it sounds intimidating. Lobster thermidor, right? It's actually really easy. Sounds intense. So
it doesn't intimidate me because I don't know what the hell it is.
Exactly. It's one way to look at it. We'll see how intimidating it really is once we get you working. So we're going to go through the process of that. We're going to pair that with a nice little side salad, and we're going to show Forrest how to make some really cute garnishes. That's going to really elevate his presentation for Valentine's Day dinner for his wife Tanya. All right.
Awesome. This episode is brought to you by Seventh Son Graffiti Orange Beer. I'm not a big wheat ale kind of guy, but this is a creamsicle wheat ale produced by one of the finer breweries in the Tampa Bay area. Seventh Son has 2 locations, one in Dunedin and one in Tampa. It's an awesome beer. I drank one of them yesterday and I'm drinking one now. And it goes really well with lobster, or so Chef Paul says.
Yes, and Chef Paul's always right, apparently. So, but it's interesting that we talk about lobster. Lobster, one of those beloved things. Obviously, keep in mind with this recipe too, we could use shrimp, we could use monkfish, we could use almost anything in this recipe as well. Because in essence, all it really is, to break it down, we have lobster. We're gonna make a really good cheese sauce with Gruyere cheese and onions, add some little flavorings to it. We're gonna add the chopped lobster meat into there. We're gonna put all that mixture back into the lobster shells. So the lobster shells will actually be almost like a serving vessel. We're gonna top that with some Parmesan cheese, some panko pork rind breadcrumbs. We'll talk about those when we get to those. Adds a little different element. And we're gonna put those back on the sheet pan, throw them under the broiler, and that is lobster thermidor.
Awesome.
Traditionally, it's served with a whole lobster. The whole thing is cut in half. Same application, to cut the meat, put it back in, roast it in the oven. It's much easier just to get tails. You can get tails at any supermarket, and it's a easier application. I remember when I was growing up, like every supermarket had a lobster tank. Mm-hmm. I thought that was the coolest thing, and I don't see those anymore, which is weird. Mm-hmm. But I always thought that was like the premium top level of elegance. Like I could never afford that. It seemed like I could never have that, you know. And they always have like the Grey Poupon next to it, which is kind of weird. But tails are kind of available everywhere. You can find them fresh, you can find them frozen, and we'll go from there. For this preparation, we're actually going to cut the lobster tails in a format that we're going to be able to use them, again, as a serving vessel, and at the same time cook the meat in a way that we can get the meat out. So we're going to start just maybe 2 millimeters above the last segment of the tail. And we're going to pierce it right there, straight all the way through the cutting board, and just straight down. Sounds like popcorn, but we're going to turn it out. If you have any of that nasty poop shoot, you take the poop shoot out, get rid of it, put my face in the camera.
That's all right.
And we're gonna
zoomed in.
We're gonna loosen the meat. Just gonna stick our finger between the shell and the meat to loosen it.
Oh, I could eat it like that.
That way when we cook it, it's not gonna stick to the shell. Because once it cooks, it's never gonna come out beautifully, you know. So we're gonna leave it just like that. And we're actually gonna salt, pepper, a little butter on these after we do the rest of them in the oven, 5 to 7 minutes. Then we're gonna take those out, take the meat out, chop it up, and we'll use that to make the base of our lobster thermidor and reserve the shells as a serving vessel. All right, so we're gonna start making our lobster thermidor sauce, you know. Sounds really intimidating. Not so much this guy, obviously, but so basically we're gonna start with butter. We got 4 ounces of butter here, or 4 tablespoons, I'm sorry. And it's really hot, so we're gonna take it off. We're gonna add our onions. Now we'll cool it right back down, we're good to go. And we're gonna cook those so they get nice and soft, nice and translucent. And then we're gonna start adding our flour to make a roux. We're going to add our milk, and we're going to add some cooked lobster meat, and we'll go from there. All right, so when we have our onions over there sweating, we're going to take our half-cooked lobster tails that we've split open, half roasted, and we're going to take that meat that we loosened earlier, and now at this point we're just going to rip it right out of the shell, you know. And as I mentioned, we want to really save the shells because we're going to put that stuff back into there. So I'll keep doing that for us if you want to cut these in some nice big chunks like that.
Okay. Sounds good. I can do nice big chunks.
Nice big chunks. All right, so you can see you've got the onions that have been sweating in the butter, getting a little bit of color on there, which is really good. So a little bit of color means the onions are starting to caramelize a little bit, taking that natural sugar in the onion and bringing that flavor out. So at this point, what we want to do, Forrest, we're going to grab 2 tablespoons of flour. We're going to add that to the, okay, add that in, give it a good stir.
You know who else finds this really interesting is our executive producer, Dudley, who has a keen interest in lobster thermidor, even though he doesn't know what it means either. And if you,
He's not intimidated either, apparently. So. So when you see me fall down, it's going to be Dudley's fault. I'm calling that right now, you know. So we're stirring that in, and essentially the flour is mixing with our butter, making a little bit of roux, and that roux is going to act as our thickening agent when we add our milk, and it'll help make our sauce. So okay, let's add our milk.
So I shouldn't just dump it in, should I?
You can. You can.
Okay.
So
there we go.
So a good rule with, you make a very good point for us about dumping it in. So what we're doing, we have a very hot roux and we have cold milk. Typically when you have those opposing forces, they kind of fight each other and we don't get big lumps. If we had hot roux, warm milk, it would kind of seize right up. We got all kinds of chunks in there.
Oh, really?
So it's a very good point you made by questioning that. So this is going to thicken up pretty quickly, as it is a small volume in here, and it's going to be pretty thick. So as soon as we get that thick, we're going to cook this for about a minute or two, because we really want to cook some of that flour flavor out. And we can go ahead and in about 30 seconds or 45 seconds, we're going to add our cheese. I'm going to turn this down just a little bit. And we're going to continue to do that. So while this is kind of cooking a little bit, let's go ahead and add our lobster meat, Forrest.
Into that?
Yep.
Okay.
We'll add our cheese last and kind of bind all that together. So.
Okay.
And you may notice it looks really, really thick, right? So when we add that lobster still has a lot of liquid in it, a lot of juice is still in there. So as that juice comes out, it's gonna kind of thin out that sauce a little bit.
Plus the sauce is going to completely cook the lobster.
Correct. So the lobster's actually going to cook 2 more times. It's going to cook a little bit in here, and it's actually going to cook again when we put the mixture back in the shells and put it under the broiler in the oven.
Okay.
So we're actually going to kill the heat for this right now. Let's go ahead and add our cheese. Very good. Can never have too much cheese, right?
Ever.
We're gonna add about a half a
Unless
teaspoon.
you're lactose intolerant.
Yeah. I won't stay with you long, so you're good. We're gonna add about half a teaspoon of Old Bay. Old Bay, that traditional crab boil kind of flavor. Give that a good stir. Yeah, that looks awesome already.
That was Gruyere cheese?
That was Gruyere, yeah. Yep, you could use white cheddar, you could use, you could probably use mozzarella. Gruyere has a little bit of that Swiss flavor, not overpowering, it's nice and creamy.
And even I was able to find it at the supermarket. Just went to the local Publix and looked for everything I just ran with the list that Paul gave me, which was lobster, Gruyere cheese.
See, actually, Forrest walked in. He's like, "Vive la France!" And where's the Gruyere?
Yeah.
And somebody walked up and gave it to him and said, "Get the hell out of here!" Apparently,
Yeah.
so let's take this off the stove and we'll put it into our lobster shell. All right, so we have our lobster thermidor mixture, and we're going to put this back into our lobster shells, and we're going to throw this back in the oven after we put some toppings on top. So we're going to take a little spoon at a time and put it right back in those shells. Technically, you could do this without the shells, so you could put it into a casserole dish. It just makes a much better, kind of more dramatic presentation when you're using the natural vessel that the meat came in. So we're just going to keep filling those up.
So this is actually not that hard. So
It's
no one
not.
should be intimidated by this because
It's really not that hard. It's a really kind of intimidating name, like thermidor. That sounds like a science project, or might sound like the next variant of COVID or whatever, or a tropical storm. Tropical storm thermidor destroyed everything, But it's really not that hard. It's really simple in essence. Let's fill up the other two, and we'll come back and we'll kind of make some heaping mounds on top to use all this mixture up. Nice and sticky. All right, let's keep filling them up. And what we're gonna do, once we get everything on there, we're gonna put two things on top. So we have some breadcrumbs, right? So and some Parmesan. So these breadcrumbs are actually pork rinds. Pork rinds that have been basically put through a food processor. A little bit of dried parsley, some salt and pepper. I put a tiny bit of regular breadcrumbs in there as well. So it's gonna add that little bit of extra fat to it, a little bit extra flavor that you don't get with traditional breadcrumbs. But you still get that little bit of crispiness on top.
More importantly, they're gluten-free, right?
They are, until I added the regular breadcrumbs.
Oh, shit. Forgot about that.
I know you're very particular about your gluten. So
Yeah, so you can do a keto-friendly and just skip the breadcrumbs.
Yeah.
Add more...
yeah, apparently we're very, very worried about our gluten, right? So at this point, so. All right, so Forrest has got the last little scoop right there. At this point, we're gonna use our best tools that we have, right? Clean hands, best tools we have. So we're just gonna kind of use our fingers and kind of reshape these, get everything back inside. And the reason I say use your fingers, you can actually feel what's happening.
You don't know how close I was to licking the stuff off my fingers.
Thank goodness you didn't.
Yeah, you can do it off camera all you want. So at this point, we will take a little bit of those breadcrumbs, pork crumbs, right? And I'm gonna top each one. And same thing with the Parmesan. I'm gonna kind of make sure there's no lumps in here. And what's nice, the Parmesan too adds a little bit of extra fat, definitely adds a little bit of extra salt. And actually adds a different layer of flavor that the Gruyere does not have, All right, so let's put these under the broiler 4 minutes or so till they're nice and golden brown.
So Paul, you were showing me how to make garnishes with the tomato.
So we're gonna do little tomato butterflies, right? Let me finish eating the tomato that's in my mouth. So Forrest is gonna cut our plum tomato in half, and I'm gonna cut half of the half into a quarter, right? So what we're gonna do, gonna turn it over. He's gonna cut a little bit of a section out of the middle to make a little bit of an indention, a little shallow pool. That's gonna be the inside of the butterfly's wings, or the outside of the butterfly's wings, actually. So Get that little bit of stem out of there. So we're gonna do, you can do any way you want. You can do your antennas first, or you can do the long cut. So Forrest is gonna make a long cut all the way down to the board and leave the last little bit intact here. You're gonna cut about halfway down at the very end. That gives us room to open it up. So I'm gonna turn it around. We're gonna cut pretty close to the skin and follow that natural curve of the tomato. You can leave a little bit of meat in there. All right, that's good right there. And we're just gonna open it up. Just open, flatten it up. There you go.
Oh, that's a perfect one.
Yep, beautiful butterfly. Look at that. That is awesome. Good job. And that's a cute little garnish. That's gonna go on top of our salad greens. That's gonna go with a lobster thermidor. Right, so another fun garnish that we're gonna work on today. I know we did the amazing butterflies earlier, right? That's gonna go with the salad portion of our plate. But obviously a traditional garnish for lobster or seafood is lemon, right? Most people put a lemon wedge or even like a lemon slice or a twist. That's pretty boring. So in another way for Forrest to elevate his Valentine's Day food plating game, we're gonna make a little basket. So we're gonna start with a lemon, end up with a basket, all right? So there's two ways to do it. So you can go out and buy a simple channel knife. So it's basically a knife, has a little bit of a V here, and we can cut strips out, right? So we can go like this, make our strips, and we can go all the way around our lemon and do that. You can actually do the same thing with a paring knife as well. You can make your cuts and kind of come back and do the same thing the other way. See, it's a little bit easier with this knife, a little bit safer. Greater chance of cutting yourself with this than you will with this. I don't think I've ever cut myself with this. Hopefully today's not the first day. But we're gonna kind of come around and finish all these. And you notice we're not doing them straight across, we're doing them at a little bit of an angle. And we're gonna come back and do the other way as well. So we're gonna have kind of that crisscross pattern. So we'll come through, take each section out so we don't pull huge chunks out. And I'm just gonna follow all the way around. Okay, and we're gonna do one right next to it, all the way around.
Is that a rooster?
For some reason I hear a rooster in the background. I was very confused for a second. I'm like, we're not even cooking chicken today.
Bird sounds for our bird in Emma's bedroom.
Keeping natural habitat?
Yes.
Yeah,
all right.
Makes them happy.
All right, so even if you make a mistake, we can fix that because we can put that part on the bottom, right? I think we're kind of good there. It doesn't have to be perfect. So like I said, we're gonna use that bottom section here that we screwed up, and we're gonna kind of flatten it out. So that's gonna be our base, right? Let's cut the ends off here, make our basket a little square on the end. And we gotta leave a space in the middle for a handle. So we're gonna cut about halfway down, right? And leave a section in the middle, halfway down. So 2 chunks here that have to come out. So we're gonna cut right to that line where we cut before. Gonna bring it in, cut it out. Same thing on this side. So we have the essence of our basket, and we gotta get some of that lemon flesh out of the middle. So we're just gonna follow the inside of the peel, and we're gonna kind of scoop down so it has like a little bowl. And we're just gonna take that flesh out. You can do it with your finger. It'll come out fairly easy. And we'll take that out. If you break it, that's fine. It's gonna go right back where we want it, right? What I like to do for a nice color change, another great garnish, there's actually some on the lobster already, is Old Bay, right? That traditional seafood flavor, crab boil, lobster boil. We're just gonna put some of that right in there. So when you actually squeeze this lemon on top of your lobster, you get both of those flavors, right? All right, so now is the most important part. besides tasting and eating, obviously, and drinking more beer. But we have our lobster thermidor hidden behind this awesome can of beer. Fresh out of the broiler, nice and hot, nice and caramelized on top. It's nice cheesy goodness, nice and crispy. Pork rinds on top, a little bit of breadcrumb in there as well, Parmesan cheese. So what we're gonna pair it with, we have our butterfly garnishes. That's gonna go with some mixed greens. Got some homemade Caesar dressing. So made the classic way, lemon juice, tons of fresh garlic. I make mine a tiny bit different because I actually start with a small scoop of mayonnaise. And the reason I do that, as opposed to just using egg yolk, it makes it really stable. So when we're adding our olive oil, it's never gonna break at that point. Anchovy paste, obviously, as well. Extra virgin olive oil, shredded Parmesan and grated Parmesan in there as well, and tons of black pepper. And it's gonna go really well. So we have that garlicky, kind of tangy Caesar dressing, gonna go with our greens, lobster thermidor, all of our traditional garnishes. So I'm gonna take a little bit of this dressing, we're gonna toss it with our greens. So let's give that a nice little toss. Mix into that nice and well. And we'll put that right on our plate. So I'm gonna put this on the back, so we really wanna focus on that lobster in the front, right? Gonna bring that on. All right, so we got our greens on the plate. Forrest is gonna bring our lobster over, put it right on front. We are going to take this beautiful butterfly that Forrest did, right? That's gonna go as our garnish on our salad. Little lemon basket there. Let's put this on this side. So we don't want to hide that beautiful butterfly, right? So there we go. We got a nice homemade, don't have to go to the restaurant, super elegant, not intimidating lobster thermidor Valentine's Day dinner.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, so all kinds of craziness happened off camera, but now's the moment of truth, right? So we have our lobster thermidor, little side salad, all of our garnishes. Thanks again, Seventh Son Brewery, amazing creamsicle wheat ale. Forrest, super thirsty. I'm dragging a little bit behind. Probably means I did a little more work apparently, but let's give it a
I did
taste.
the heavy lifting.
He did, yeah. You had an injury, so you needed the
Yeah.
yeah, little care package, right? So let's start. I'm gonna start with lobster. You got lobster on yours?
Yeah.
Let's give it a taste. So it should be nice and cheesy, a little bit of salty, nice and creamy.
That's really good.
Good job. How's the salad?
I love that dressing. It's really good.
And wash it down with some creamsicle wheat ale.
Whatever's
I
left.
wish you had some. Actually, I don't care, but I have some. So cheers, y'all. Join us for our next episode. Doing some chocolate souffles, right? What a better way to finish out Valentine's Day than with chocolate. Cheers.